Okay, in this video we go on to some more word problems in Chapter 1, Section 5. We have number 35. And we'll be using the interest equals principal times rate times time formula that we learned earlier in this section. You deposit $2,000 in an account that earns simple interest at an annual rate of 4%. How long must you leave the money in the account to earn $500 in interest? Well, in all of these problems, or in many problems like this, we may be given a number of pieces of information and we'll have to find one or more missing pieces. So if we start to go through the problem, we see we deposit $2,000 in an account. So $2,000 deposited, that's our principal. That earns simple interest at an annual rate of 4%. So our rate is 0.04. We want to write that as a decimal so we can use it in calculations, not as a percent. How long must you leave the money in the account? So T, we don't know. And in order to earn $500 in interest, so assuming that I is 500. So then we're just going to put all these pieces together, and we see that interest, which is 500, is equal to principal, $2,000, times rate, which is 0.04, times time, which is just T. We don't know. So all we really need to do at this point is to simplify and to solve for that T. So I'm going to bring up the calculator, and we have 2,000 times 0.04 gives us 80. And so we have 500 is equal to 80 times T. And at that point, or at this point, we want to isolate the T, solve for T, and one more time, bring up the calculator. We have 500 divided by 80 is equal to 6.25. T is equal to 6.25. Remember that T is always in years, so that's 6 1/4 years. A quarter of a year is about 3 months. So that's how long we would have to leave the money in the account to earn $500 in interest. Great, so let's go on to another problem here. Number 36. Okay, so for problem number 36, we have a flight averaging 460 miles per hour. The return flight averages 500 miles per hour due to a tailwind. The total flying time is 4.8 hours. How long is each flight? Explain. So we've learned a strategy for solving distance problems similar to this. So, and it kind of looks like this. Distance equals rate times time. And in this one we have return flight, and we have just the regular flight, a flight and a return flight. Alright, so filling in information we know. The flight is 460 miles per hour. The return flight, 500 miles per hour. And we know that the total flying time, when I add those up, has to be 4.8 hours. So we learned a strategy for working with this, and that is we don't know what the time for the original flight is, but if we have a total of 4.8 hours, all we need to do is subtract the original flight time from the 4.8 to get the return time. So for example, if the original flight took 1 hour and we only have a total of 4.8 hours to use, we'd subtract 1 from 4.8 and we'd get 3.8. If it took 2 hours, then it would be 4.8 minus 2, and we'd get 2.8 hours. Now we do know that the distances flown are the same, and so at this point we can make our two equations. D is equal to 460x. Our second equation then is D is equal to 500 times the quantity 4.8 minus x. I don't want to get that 4.8 above that confused with this, so I'm going to take it out of the way there. Now from these two equations we know, or from this scenario, we know that the distance flown by the planes are the same. So because of that, we can set the two equations, because the distance flown is the same in both cases, we can set the distance equal to each other. And so we get 460x is equal to 500 times 4.8 minus x. And we're ready to begin to solve that. I'm going to distribute on the right side. I have 500 times 4.8, and that gives me 2400. So I have 2400 minus 500x is equal to 460x. At this point we're going to add 500x on both sides, and we get 960x is equal to 2400. Divide by 960, divide by 960, and so bringing up the calculator again, we get 2400, let's move that out of the way, 2400 divided by 960 is equal to 2.5 hours. So what does that mean? That is the flight time, original flight time. That's the going amount. Then we know that coming back, it's 4.8 minus that gives us 2.3. And so we end up with 2.3 hours. Sorry for all the bells ringing here. We end up with 2.3 hours returning. And so that's what we do. That's how we find out. Now, we could also determine how long the flight was by simply multiplying either 460 times 2.5, although this question is not asked here. Let's see, 460 times 2.5 is going to give us 1,150 miles was the trip. The length of the trip was 1,150 miles. That's a pretty substantial plane ride. All right, so that's it for this particular problem.